Hello student, today we're going to talk about computer hardware. So regardless what type of system you want to build, there are 5 hardware that you need. So when we talk about technology, a lot of people see the software, but we need good machine to run the software. So this is the reason why I'm going to talk about the computer hardware. This course is called CompTIA 220-1001. And there is another class that talk about software. If you finish that class and you are interested, you can sign up to take the 220-1002, which is the class that will talk a lot about software. And in this class, I want you to understand the different type of hardware you need to build a computer system, how to configure them, and how to select the right hardware to build the system that you need. The type of system you need depends on the type of operating system you're going to run and what you intend to do with that system. As I said, anything that you do in terms of technology, you need the software, but you need the system hardware to run the software. So, you may need to have a PC, you may need to have a laptop or a small mobile device. There are software that are designed. You need a PC. There are software that are designed for laptop, and there are software that are designed for small device. So the type of system that you need will depend on the type of software you're going to run in that system, and also what do you want to do with that system. That is the most important. They have desktop PC that will stay on your desktop or wherever. Laptop is like an extended version of desktop. Laptop, like this machine here, is a computer that allows you to bring your office any place you want. If you don't want to work in your office, you want to go to the beach to spend your day working at the beach, you can bring your laptop. If you are traveling, you want to travel with your office, the laptop can carry everything that you have in the desktop. You can access your network using the laptop, but also you can install all the software that you are using at your office, which is different from a mobile device, because the mobile device cannot do everything that a desktop computer can do. So if you have your cell phone, you still can do a lot of work in your cell phone. I do a lot of work in my cell phone, but there are work that I do in my office, I cannot do them using my mobile device. I will have to go with a laptop. Like if I'm taking a vacation, I'm traveling, I still want to do some work, I will go with my laptop. It is not everything you can do using a desktop and a laptop you can do using a mobile device. So when you are building a computer system, you will have to choose a case. There are many types of case, and the type of case you're going to use depends on how much hardware you're going to put inside that case and what you intend to do with that system you want to build. And also, how much space do you have in your office? So this case here is a full tower. This is a case designed to put on the floor next to your desk, or you can also put it in top of your desk. But as you can see, it is a pretty big case. But however, if you look at, there are a lot you can put in that case, because this case is designed to take 3 DVD-ROM. They are space, they call them bay. They have space where you can put 3 DVD-ROM. That computer has only 1 DVD-ROM, but if I want to add 2 other DVD-ROM or add something else, I can use one of these bay to put it. So if you have a smaller case, you will not be able to do all of this. And if you look at behind the case, right here, you can see all the ports available. And in a small computer, a smaller case, you will not be able to install all of this. So as I said again, it depends on how much you want to do with your computer. As you go, you become a technician or a system builder. You will figure out, based on what your customer wants you to do, or based on what type of system you're trying to design, you're going to make your own judgment what type of case it's appropriate for what you want to do. Now, if you look at this, this is a small form factor, small case. If you look at that case, there is space to put the same type of DVD you use for a laptop. This is the same type of DVD you can use in that case, because they are not enough space to put a bigger DVD. And for those type of small form factor, you will have to put a motherboard that is also a small form factor motherboard, because the motherboard should be able to fit the case and everything else that you need in your computer to make the computer work. Now, after you select your case based on which form factor, and in the presentation, you will see all the type, all the form factor. We have the ATX form factor that is very known in the market. And the second most popular form factor is the micro ATX, which is another version of ATX.
What's the form factor?
The form factor reflects the size, the shape, and the layout of the component inside a case. So when we talk about form factor, we talk about the size, the shape, and the layout. So let me explain a little bit more about this. The form factor of the case will dictate which type of power supply you can put in that case. Because if you use a ATX form factor case, you will have to use a motherboard that is an ATX motherboard, because the layout inside the ATX case will be different than the layout inside a micro ATX case or a PTX case. So there are many types of case. The type of case you use will dictate what type of motherboard to use and what type of power supply to buy. If you buy ATX form factor, you have to buy the power supply, which is ATX2. You have to buy the motherboard ATX, because the power supply, the case, and the motherboard have to be the same form factor. So let's open the case. To open the case is make sure you find out where are the screws that secure the cover of the case, and you can look at inside the case. Now, I don't know if you can come over and show exactly if you can see what is inside that case. Let me turn around. Inside that case, you see there is the motherboard, and in the motherboard underneath of that fan, they have the CPU. Let me show you what the CPU look like. The CPU is the central processing unit. This is the part of the computer system that does all the calculation. Whatever you ask the computer to do, you use a software to talk to the computer, but this is the CPU that will execute all the commands. So I would say this is the most important component in any system you want to build. And regardless, this is a PC you want to build, regardless, this is a mobile device that you want to build or a laptop, any computing device will have a CPU, the central processing unit. And if you look at inside that computer too, you will see we have RAM, random access memory. This is RAM. So the function of random access memory, when the computer is doing something, like you ask the CPU to do something for you, the CPU does everything in RAM. So this is a temporary storage for the CPU to do its job. So more RAM you have in the computer is more space the CPU will have to temporarily store software, command, or whatever you want to do with the computer. And all your work will be done here in the random access memory. But this is only a temporary storage for the CPU. If you want to save your job, like everything you install in the computer system will need a storage drive. This is what we call hard disk drive or solid state drive. When we study the hard drive, I will explain the difference between a solid state drive and a hard disk drive. But they're both storage drive that is used for the purpose of installing your software, for the purpose of storing your database, for the purpose of storing all your work in the computer. Regardless of the music you download, everything you save will store right here in the storage drive. So I said there are two types of storage drive that we use in personal computer. We use the solid state drive, which is the SSD, or we use the hard disk drive that we call HDD. Now, what we said, the CPU execute all the command, whatever the user want the computer to do. The user use a software to do it, and the CPU use RAM or random access memory as the temporary storage to do its job. And now when you finish to do your job, you store everything in the storage drive. So now I said if you want to build a system, you need a case, which is the housing for all the components you're going to install inside the system unit. A new word, system unit. In the IT world, we call this box a system unit. We can call this a chassis or a case. So in my presentation, sometime I will use chassis, sometime I will use case, sometime I will use system unit. They all mean the same thing. The box that contains all the components in the computer system. the most important hardware component you need when you are building a system. First, you need a case. Then you need a motherboard, which is the place where everything in the computer system is connected. Regardless, is the CPU. The motherboard comes with a socket to put the CPU. Like the CPU here, you take the CPU and you put the CPU in the CPU socket. Each motherboard will have a CPU socket to install the CPU. And as you can see earlier, I was talking about RAM, the temporary storage for the CPU. So each motherboard will come with a socket to install the RAM. So regardless is the RAM, the CPU, they are attached to the motherboard. Now, the storage drive is also connected to the motherboard because you will need those cable. They call them data cable. You will connect a data cable to the hard drive, and the other end of the cable will be connected to the motherboard. So this is the way it is. Regardless is the DVD-ROM. If you look at here inside this computer, you will see there are cables that connect the drive to the motherboard. And what about the power supply? The function of the power supply. This is the power supply. As you can see, there are all type of cable coming, all kind of wires coming from the power supply, and different type of connector. So it depends of what type of connector is necessary for the drive you want to install in the computer. And this cable here is to bring power to the motherboard. It will be attached to the motherboard, and it is called P1. We have other cable that bring power to the motherboard too. You have to be able to identify all this type of connector that is attached to the power supply. So the job of those connector is whether to bring power to the motherboard for the CPU, bring power for all of the circuit in the motherboard, and some of this cable is to bring power to the drive. So everything inside the computer need electricity, and this is the power supply that will bring electricity. There's something I want to bring to your attention. Everything inside a computer system use 5 volt, 3.3 volt, or 12 volt. There is nothing, no voltage bigger than 12 volt inside a computer. And the power that you have in your office will be 115 or 125 because this is what we use in the US. Now, the power that you have available in your house is a 115 volt. And the voltage that you use inside the computer is a 12 volt. And there's a difference between those two types of voltage. One is a current, a continued current, and one is an alternative current. That means one is moving from up, down, up and down. And we said the frequency of the electricity in the US is 60 hertz. That means that voltage change from negative to positive 60 times per second. And the CC current that we are talking about, that is used inside the computer, move from positive to negative on a straight line, from positive to negative. So this is two types of current. One that come to your house that is provided by the electrical power provider, and one that your power supply will transform from alternative current to continued current. So this is one function of this power supply, is to change from alternative current to continued current, which is two different types of current. Now, the second function, that power supply will provide three types of voltage: the 12 volt, the 3.3 volt, and the 5 volt. So not only it take down from 115 to 12 volt, 5 volt, and 3.3 volt, but this power supply also changed the sense of the electricity from alternative to continued current, which is very important to understand. So this little box is designed to work in countries that use higher voltage than the United States. In United States of America, very few devices use 250 volt. But if you go to countries like England, like Canada, in Africa, most of the countries in the world use 250 volt. So this power supply comes with that little sliding switch in the back that you can slide if you travel from the United States to any other country. You will slide it to the 250 volt. So you have to know that, because there are a lot of students, a lot of people traveling from Europe or from any part of the world to live in the United States of America. When they come here, their computer can start acting up. But if you know you just change from 120 or 115 to 250 or 240, it depends of what the electrical power company in your region, in your area provide, because some of them provide 250 and some of them provide 230 or 240 volt. So I think we covered the most important hardware component. It's like a summary of everything you're going to need when you build a computer. But in this course, we're going to study the different type of technology that you will find in the motherboard. Then after we finish to study the motherboard, we will study all different type of technology you find in the power supply. Then we're going to study all the different type of technology that make this device work, the RAM, and the different type of RAM. And we're going to study the different type of case, different technology in the case. Then we will have to spend a long time study the different type of CPU, the different type of technology inside the CPU that make the CPU work, and the reason why computer can do amazing work that the human brain cannot do. So this is where we stop with the presentation today. And what I want you to understand, the different type of hardware component you need to build a computer system. First, I said you need a case, and we talk about the different type of case, the different type of technology. And second, you need a motherboard, which is the place where everything in the computer system will connect. And this is the place, this is the motherboard that have all type of technology to manage the computer system. So it is very important to understand the different components that are included in the motherboard, and that will be our next presentation. And that make it the second component. And the third component you need is a CPU. The CPU, which is the component that will execute everything that a user want to do using a different type of software. Whatever the software you want to use, the CPU will understand the language, and the CPU will execute all the command. Whatever the user want the CPU to do, the CPU will do it. And that's the third component. The fourth component will be RAM, random access memory, which is the temporary storage for the CPU. When the CPU is doing its job, the CPU want a place. It's like a bench table for the CPU. Everything the CPU is doing, the CPU will go to RAM to do it. And when you put a computer on, the computer load the operating system in RAM. If you open a software, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Access, or any software you want to use, the software will be uploaded in RAM. So the CPU can find anything that it needs to do its job in RAM. This is the workbench table for the CPU. Then the fifth component will be the storage drive, because when you install a software, the software will store right here in the storage drive. When you install the operating system will store right here in the storage drive. You download the music, you do your resume, whatever you have, it will be stored right here in the storage drive. So those are the 5 hardware components that you need to build a computer. But as I said, the computer is composed of hardware and software. When you finish to build any computer system, regardless is a PC, is a laptop, or a mobile device, I build all of them. But when you finish to build any computer system, you need to install an operating system. Could be Windows operating system, could be Apple iOS, could be any type of operating system, but a computer system is not complete until you install an operating system. This is where I start with my presentation for today. I want you to do all your reading, and after that I want you to go to the quiz and do the quiz. And this is the quiz that will tell me whether or not you understand. And if you have any question too, go to the virtual classroom and ask your question. See you next time.